The other night, I was talking with my stepfather, and something he told me years ago came back up. A simple line. The less you say, the less you have to defend. And it hit me, not as advice, but as truth. Because if you're really paying attention, most of the things we end up defending, we created by saying too much. Welcome back to the Motivated Savages podcast, where we live bold, lead fearless, and ignite our path forward. I'm Jody Savage, and today we're getting into something that sits right under the surface of everything you do. How you speak, how you react, how you carry yourself in moments that matter. After that conversation, I kept thinking about how many times this has shown up in my life. Not in big, monumental ways, but in quiet, everyday moments. Moments where something could either stay simple or become something I'd have to manage. There's a space that exists between what you think and what you say. Most people move too fast through that space. They don't even realize it's there. A thought shows up and a reaction follows. And before they've had time to understand it, it's already been spoken. That's where most unnecessary problems begin. Not because the thought was wrong, but because it was released without intention. Your mind produces constantly. It observes, reacts, interprets, fills the gaps. It's designed to do that. But not everything it produces is meant to be shared. Some thoughts are incomplete. Many of them are emotional, and others are based on assumptions that haven't been tested. And when those thoughts move straight into words, they carry all of that with them. Now, it's not just something you felt internally, it's something someone else can respond to. Question, challenge, expand. And once it's out there, you're connected to it. There are moments in leadership where you feel the pull to explain everything. A decision is made, someone questions it, there's a pause in the room. You can feel your internal dialogue start to move. You want to walk them through your reasoning. You want to lay out every step. Make sure they see that full picture. It feels responsible. It feels like good communication. But I've learned that the more you expand in those moments, the more space you create for the conversation to shift. Now, it's no longer about the decision. It's about the details, the interpretation, the gaps someone might find in what you added. And I've been in those moments where I kept talking, thinking I was helping the room understand. And instead, I gave the room more to push against. Then there are those moments where I've chosen differently, where I've said, this is the direction we're going, and I let it land. No extra layers, no added explanation, and something interesting happens. The room settles. Not because there aren't questions, but because the statement carries weight. That's not about control. That's about alignment. When you're clear internally, your words don't need reinforcement. They hold. Family is where this gets tested the most, because the emotional connection is already there. Something small can shift the tone. A comment, a misunderstanding, a look. And immediately your internal response shows up. You want to correct it, clarify it, make sure it doesn't turn into something it wasn't meant to be. That's where most situations expand. Not from the initial moment, but from everything that follows. I've had conversations where I followed that instinct, where I added context, tried to smooth things over, explained what I meant. And all it did was give that moment more energy, more direction, more life. Then I've had moments where I let it pass, where I stayed present, but didn't add to it. And without that added layer, the moment didn't grow. It moved on. There's something important in that. Not everything needs to be corrected, and not everything needs to be clarified. Some things dissolve when you don't build them into something bigger. In friendships and relationships, there's a strong desire to be seen clearly, to be understood for what you meant. So when something feels slightly off, there's a pull to step in and explain, to add that context, to make sure the other person doesn't misinterpret your actions. It sounds like connection, but a lot of the time, it's control. It's trying to manage how someone else sees you. And that can lead to over-communication, saying more than is needed, giving more than was asked for. There's strength in allowing space, in letting your actions stand without constant explanation. Because when something is grounded, it doesn't need to be constantly reinforced. All of this starts internally, before a single word is spoken. The habit is formed in how you respond to your own thoughts. If every thought feels urgent, if every reaction feels like it needs to be expressed, then your external world will reflect that. But when you begin to notice your thoughts without immediately acting on them, something shifts. You create space. And in that space, you begin to see clearly. Which thoughts are worth sharing? Which ones are temporary? And which ones are better left alone? That's where discipline is built. Not in silence, but in selection. Every time you speak, you set something in motion, even in small ways. A sentence can shift a conversation. A comment can change direction. A reaction can create tension. And once that motion starts, it doesn't stop immediately. It moves. It evolves. It builds. And now you're part of that movement. When you become more intentional with what you release, you become more aware of what you create. Not everything needs to be initiated. Not everything needs to be expanded. There's power in restraint, not as limitation, but as precision. People often think presence comes from saying the right things, But it comes from something deeper. It comes from trust. Trust in what you've said. Trust in what you've chosen not to say. When you don't rush to fill the space, when you don't chase every reaction, when you don't feel the need to reinforce your position, you create a different kind of energy. People feel it, even if they can't explain it. It's steadiness. It's clarity. It's control without force. And that doesn't come from speaking more. It comes from speaking with intention. This isn't something you understand once and move on. It's something you practice in meetings, at home, in conversations that matter, in moments that don't seem important at all. It shows up when you pause instead of react, when you choose instead of release, when you allow something to stay simple instead of turning into something more. And over time, it becomes part of how you move. Not forced, not calculated, just natural. So for the next 48 hours, I want you to pay attention to the space between your thoughts and your words. Don't try to silence anything. Just notice. Notice when you feel the pull to add more. Notice when you want to clarify, explain, or step in. And instead of acting immediately, pause. Ask yourself, is this necessary? Or am I about to create something I'll need to manage? And then choose from that place. I'm Jody Savage, and this is the Motivated Savages podcast. Live bold, ignite your path. That's the Savage way. If this message resonated, share it with someone who's been carrying conversations longer than they need to. And if you want to carry this message with you, check out our merch line at motivatedsavages.com. We've designed gear to remind you to live bold every day. Together, we're building the Savage community, a movement of people choosing purpose, growth, and bold living.